I really want to start talking about, where we're at, and I really want to get into the basic history of this institution, because one of the things I've noticed regarding online information about Pennhurst, that there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of misconceptions that people have about Pennhurst today. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I see about Pennhurst historically is what this place was. First things first, whenever people think of Pennhurst, they think of this place as an asylum. So, quite frankly, this institution was not an asylum. And that could be really confusing because, geez, the tickets you guys bought were off of pennhurstasylum.com. All of our merchandise says Pennhurst Asylum. So what is this place then? Well, this was an institution for disabled people. This was not a place for psychiatric people. There were not any bad people that came here to Pennhurst. This was not a place for the criminally insane or any type of person with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe case of depression, anxiety. Those are all psychiatric asylum cases. But here at Pennhurst, this was originally known as the Eastern State Institution for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. We're talking about the realm of disability, my friends. We're talking people with autism, people with Down syndrome, people with cerebral palsy, people with any type of physical, developmental, or intellectual disability was housed in this place here behind us. In fact, the building right behind me was considered a low-grade cottage. What that means is the people who lived inside Mayflower were little to no speech skills. A lot of the people were nonverbal, and also a lot of the people were lower functioning. They couldn't take care of themselves. They couldn't change themselves or feed themselves. And as we go along, I'll be talking about all the other types of wards and buildings we'll be seeing here. But the first thing that we really just got to understand is the types of people that were living here. Quite frankly, we're talking about victims. Victims of upwards to 80 years of institutional abuse, suffering, voices of the disabled being stomped on here. One thing that I always find really fascinating about Pennhurst is that where it stands in history. You're standing on the birthplace of one of the biggest human rights movements in world history. A lot of the reasons that the things have gotten better in the realm of disability is because of the events that happened here at Pennhurst. Us going to the Supreme Court 3 times, changing the world entirely of how we operate institutions or places like Pennhurst. usually like to start my tours here because this is where a Pennhurst resident would walk into for the first time. And geez, if any of them ever got to leave this institution, this was going to be the last building they walked out of. But not many people got to see the outside walls of Pennhurst. We had over 10,600 people here admitted to Pennhurst, and over 5,600 of them passed away here. Over half the people that ever came here died here. And why is that? And the reason why that is because we have to talk about what it means to be a person living inside of an institution, because it's very different from living in an asylum or a psychiatric institute. Where asylums, the goal is to get you on the right medication, to get you on the right therapy, and then eventually move you out. Obviously, in some certain psychiatric cases, they will be staying in a hospital permanently. But the main difference is that those individuals will eventually leave. But here at state schools, institutions, people spent their whole lives here. Society was afraid of disability. And to really get the best understanding of this history, we got to go over a big, sensitive, really dark topic. And I want to ask you guys here, show of hands, have we heard of eugenics before? There's no shame if any of us haven't heard of eugenics. Great, I get to talk about it. What happened in Nazi Germany is a prime example of eugenics. But if we take a textbook look at eugenics, we see what was happening here at Pennhurst, we can get a better understanding. So eugenics takes a look at bloodlines. It takes a look at the genetics of human beings. And eugenics is saying that there is a superior race and that there is people that are inferior that no longer need to be in the gene pool. So what does that mean? So if we wind back the clock over 100 years ago and we talk about the early research of eugenics is saying that, well, especially with talking about slavery, and we're talking about racism, segregation, well, any type of person that was considered white was seen as being superior racist to any other race. In fact, a lot of people of color made their way to institutions like Pennhurst, assuming that they had intellectual disabilities, but quite frankly, it wasn't legal for them to go to school. So that's another misconception with how this history was very racist and ableist. It kind of coincides with each other here at Pennhurst. But obviously now people who are intellectually gifted were preferred, people who are smart, people who can pick up on things quick. And obviously, talking about the Industrial Revolution, people who can work their asses off, people who can work and be productive. These are kind of the big three traits in eugenics. And obviously being attractive was also a huge one in eugenics. Because eugenics is saying that through human evolution, we've made tremendous progress. And eugenics is saying that if we revert back, it will be detrimental to society. So what does that mean? Any person of color, any person with a mental illness, any person with an intellectual developmental disability were targeted. And because here in the United States, they couldn't just murder every single disabled person, then the solution was to institutionalize every single disabled person here in the United States. And Pennhurst was pretty much the largest institution here in the state of Pennsylvania to house disabled folks. So that is kind of to get a bare grounds of where we were talking about. So what does that mean, applying eugenics to the history of Pennhurst? What that means is that the people that are walking inside of these doors are not seen with any good intent. People, like I said, people were afraid of disability. People didn't have an understanding of what we have today, where today's world, we coexist with disability. A fourth of this country identifies as being disabled. I mean, geez, eventually at some point in our lives, we will all become disabled, whether it's through old age, whether it's through an accident, whether it's through any type of disease. And so we're very familiar with disability, especially how there's special education classrooms in our school, but here in 1908, the only other solution was an institution. There wasn't community college. So thousands of people poured their way into the administration facility here and then assigned to a ward here at Pennhurst. Where then behind these doors, they would do a psychological evaluation, they would do an IQ test, and based on that, would assign them to a ward. And this is where we got to talk about a big topic next on the history, and that's terminology and how it applies to the disabled. Because once you took an IQ test, it puts you into 3 categories of feeble-mindedness. We have 75 to 50, which was the highest on feeble-mindedness. That was the category of moron. 50 to 25 IQ puts you into the category of imbecile. And then from 25 to 0 IQ, which was deemed the hopeless, the helpless category of feeble-mindedness, put you into the category of idiot. Now, like I said, as a historian, I love seeing the reactions of people whenever I talk about the history, because I remember when I first learned about this place, how much it shocked me. You know, just by seeing your faces after I said idiot, moron, and imbecile, I can see that we're all familiar. We've heard these words before. Geez, we might even use these in the last 24 hours to insult somebody that we think is dumb or stupid, people we don't like. You know, it's okay.
Usually to insult people we do actually like.
Then too. Fair enough.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Exactly. We do it with our friends. Like in this, but the point being, in American culture or just world culture, we use these words and interchangeably, not really understanding the weight that idiot, moron, and imbecile has, because that was the identity of a disabled person in an institution. Where being labeled as a moron meant that you were the biggest threat to society, because that means you could blend in easier with the non-disabled crowd. That means that you could have not been institutionalized, which means eugenics is failing, which means that human evolution is failing through the lens of 1908 America when this place opened up. And then to be labeled as an imbecile pretty much meant that you were the average of a Pennhurst resident. You were going to be signed a ward like Mayflower, so on and so forth, and you were going to receive little care. But to be labeled as an idiot in an institution meant that you were given essentially a death sentence. You were not going to leave an institution labeled as an idiot. You weren't even going to receive little care, because looking at face value, the superintendents, they look at an individual and they say, what's the point? Because it's going to take too much effort to educate them and to work with them, because this place was so overcrowded and understaffed. The best example I like to give how it compares, because the IQ test, quite frankly, doesn't really accurately describe somebody's level of intelligence. It's faulty. And an example of that is I always bring up the case of Stephen Hawking. So an individual like Stephen Hawking, I'm sure we're pretty much all familiar with. If not, he's an individual he's so gifted whenever he was alive. But he's essentially incapacitated. He has ALS, so he can't move, he can't speak, he can't convey his thoughts to the world without technology. But before the technology being developed, an individual like Stephen Hawking would have been institutionalized. In fact, if Stephen Hawking took the IQ test here at Pennhurst, he would have scored less than 10, he would have been labeled as an idiot. And then if you try to give the case for Stephen Hawking, you say, why? This individual deserves the right to be educated. This deserves the right of a good life. Well, then the states would say, what's the point? They would look at an individual like Stephen Hawking and then say, there's nothing going on inside of his head. Why should we? He's just another paycheck that we have to write off. I know, it's terrible. But, you know, we gotta wind back the clock and really understand the world of disability. And disability was not seen as a human thing. People labeled as disabled in this institution were quoted medically terminology at the time, defective. They were defective human beings. They were subhuman, and they were treated as such. Almost essentially to the same level as a lab rat, as a test monkey. In fact, actually, animals at the Philadelphia Zoo in the year 1968 were given more money for daily upkeep than disabled people were here at Pennhurst. The zoo, in the year 1968, they were given $7.10 for daily upkeep. But for a human being in an institution at Pennhurst, it was $5.80. That's food, that's clothing, that's upkeep. You know, this is where the value that was placed onto a marginalized group such as disabled folks. And because whenever they came here, they felt that it was justified to take their rights away. Because once again, eugenics is this huge social science that's saying that this is okay. These individuals deserve it. And one of the things that I feel like is the best to understand this history is to really take yourself out of your own shoes. It's to imagine yourself to be here, or it's to imagine yourself as a Pennhurst resident. Because whenever you came to an institution like Pennhurst, think of every single liberty that you have today, take that away. So let's think of our amendment rights, let's think of our constitutional freedoms that we have here as a US citizen. And one of the freedoms that we have today is that we get to choose how we express ourselves. We get to choose how we present ourselves with clothing. But whenever you came to an institution like Pennhurst, especially when it was severely overcrowded, some of the only clothing that was given to you was just a hospital gown. Most of the time it was state clothing. Even if your parents tried to give you clothing, you couldn't. And then also to be institutionalized here, some of your other freedoms is choose how we the friends we make, the people we hang out with, and the food we eat. Here at an institution, they put a plate in front of you, and that was your food. And then, geez, imagine all of us here. To give you an example of the overcrowding, I think we have about 50 of us here. Take this and double it, and then we're all roommates on the second floor of that building. That was the level of overcrowding that these facilities had. And even if you tried to communicate your own rights to your parents, what was happening here, and you tried to speak back against the institution, they taught obedience. They taught you to listen. They would stomp on every single right you have, and if you tried to talk back, they would send you to a punishment board, which would mean you would have to go to a facility of lower functioning people, and you would have to help clean up poop, you would have to clean up pee, and you would have to help shower people. You essentially were working as a nurse's aide. And the biggest right that I feel like that we all, that we have today that I kind of take for granted, especially when I come here to Pennhurst, every time I come here and think about this, is that we get to come here to Pennhurst, and we get to associate this place as a site of enjoyment. We get to come here, we get to learn about the history, we get to learn about the paranormal, we get to have fun here today. And then we get to go home. The people who came here didn't have that right. The best way to describe it is imagine it like this. Your parents, you go to your doctor, and your parents and your doctors are saying that there's something wrong with you. You need to be fixed. And it's your fault. And then what they would do is they would send you to a school. This was a state school. And imagine that the school that you go to, you don't get to leave your school. In fact, your parents rarely visit you at the school. In fact, the school you're living in is now your new home. And then you're told the school that you're living in is going to be the place that you're going to die in. To really think of that is the existence that a disabled person had in an institution like Pennhurst. I mean, we talk about it over and over again, how terrible it is in the context of where we are today. But it took the courage, it took the bravery, and it took the resilience of the people that lived into this institution to get where we are now. So really, we always talk about the lawmakers were the brave ones, that they were the ones that really helped change this place. But quite frankly, the bravest people were the people that lived inside of these walls, that endured over almost 100 years of institution and died, especially. But, as I go on this history tour, we're going to be talking dates and buildings, but quite frankly, the most important thing I feel like we should all understand is that we never repeat this history ever again. Because we could be this close to repeating it. And what I mean by that is that these places are actually still existing. Over 1,000 people here in the state of Pennsylvania live in an institution like Pennhurst. There's 5 Pennhursts left standing today in this state. And as of 6 years ago, only 13 states have actually banned institutions. So a great majority of this country still has legalized operating institutions. And the way we really start to prevent this is by being kind to one another, showing kindness, and not judging. Because like I said, with the institutional admission process, this was all judging people by the book, just by the cover of the book. Looking at them at face value and saying that is your work, this is who you are as a human being. Because one thing that's important to understand about the realm of disability is that it takes so many ways of being accessible to really truly tap into people. But they didn't understand that. They didn't understand disability. And we'll talk more about that. Next, I want to take us up to the hospital. We've had it year after year where people come in and investigate this place, and they're rude. And they treat the spirits and they treat the ghosts like the oppressors that oppress disabled people here. That's why we have so much respect for these people here, because God, we're not.
Talk about Zach Baggins.
Yeah!
I didn't want to say it either, but thank you for bringing
Thanks
that
for
up.
addressing the elephant in the room, my friend. See, doesn't that feel so much better now? Right? Staff of around 8 state employees and around 80 working patients would be inside of that building producing 10 tons of laundry a day. Yeah, pretty severe number, 10 tons of laundry. And how they would ship it was through the railroads. The railroads used to run up this little hill all the way through the institution here. And you know what's cool? We don't really take customers this path to the history tours, but since we got a pretty big number here, we get to go this path. I want you guys to look on the road as we make our way up. You can still probably see some of the old train tracks that used to run through Pennhurst. But earlier, somebody made this really good point that And what about the people that were just dropped off here? And, you know, with the history tours that we do here, we have 2 state employees that help us operate history tours, people who worked here, telling their history and their side of the story. And one of the employees, Donna, if you guys ever come back, well, I'm pretty sure, are you guys coming back here for Saturday and Sunday?
Yes.
Hell yeah. Go to Mayflower Building. Go through the museum. It's amazing. You get to experience the history from people who were a part of it. And you'll see Donna, you'll see Miss Essex in the museum. But Donna told me the story once on a history tour about a person that was dropped off to the railroad. Their parent gave them a poster that had the child's name, and then it said stop at Pennhurst. Dropped off here, made their way to the institution. And, you know, we talk a lot about eugenics, but, you know, what does that make us think of whenever we hear that story? And, you know, I don't know what you guys are thinking, but that makes me think of the Holocaust. It makes me think of concentration camps, because those were folks making their way into places where they were going to spend their final moments through the trains. Same thing inside of institutions. People came here, they were going to spend the rest of their lives here. And one thing that's very scary in terms of Auschwitz and Pennhurst is that once they came here to Pennhurst, they were separated by male and female. All the buildings that you're going to investigate in tonight, all the buildings you see around you, they only housed men up until the mid-1970s. Because all the women, past that building, off into the distance where the Veterans Hospital is, that's where all the women live. So once you came to this institution, they separated you by either male or female, just like what was happening in concentration camps like Auschwitz. Because why? The reason being, they have to prevent these individuals from reproducing. So here at Pennhurst, in fact, to even get the female campus built, the superintendent was quoting one of the lead eugenicists of the country at the time. The aide came over, attended Terry Lee, and then went to go remove what she thought was a broken tooth in her mouth. It actually moved her jaw out of her mouth. I know. Terrible. Terrible. Why didn't we call a doctor? Why didn't we call someone? So that's why the lawsuit was filed. And then that's what kind of started the whole Pennhurst lawsuit. Then it became a full investigation. In fact, in the early 1980s, we were investigated by a whole year by the FBI. They indicted 13 people for abuse here. Anyways, why it connects to K buildings, because in that same year, while the lawsuit was filed, if you ever look up Halderman versus Pennhurst on Google, you'll see a lot of images of the lawsuit. In fact, we have some of them posted up inside the buildings, such as the isolation wards in Devon Hall when you investigate there tonight. So you guys can walk into a space and see, wow, this is where people were neglected and put here for timeout. Back on track again. With the lawsuit, a lot of the photo evidence was taken from the K building. And then it's so ironic that this building was knocked down while the lawsuit was starting up. Were they trying to conceal evidence? Who knows? It's a Pennhurst theory. You know, a lot of the other historians here, we like to put on our tinfoil caps, and that's some of the things that we'll do it for. But, you know, in my opinion, we don't really know. And if I had to give you my honest opinion, it didn't matter what you saw in K. It was everywhere. You couldn't just find neglect in K. You found neglect in Devon. You found it in Philadelphia. You found it in Mayflower. It was happening everywhere. It's just K had a lot of photo evidence at that time. So that was a fascinating story that we talked about in terms of conspirating with the history here at Pennhurst. But then with that lawsuit, it started to shape the world entirely how this facility was going to work. Because this lawsuit essentially showed that Pennhurst violated every single human right that a person has. So what happened was that they weren't trying to close this place down. Funnily enough, the parent of Terry Lee Halderman said that she would rather see her child dead than living outside of an institution. So quite frankly, parents still wanted this place to exist. So then the solution was the judge, one of the judges on the case, Justice Broderick, was absolutely horrified. And what he decided to do was to give every single person who was living at Pennhurst at the time a second chance at their life. And what I mean by that was that he thought that every single person living in Pennhurst deserved to live in the community because of how terrible their lives were here at Pennhurst. If you guys have ever watched Ghost Hunter Media and you've heard of Candyland, we might have heard of that place before, or if we've investigated here, we might have heard of Candyland. It takes place in the basement over here. You'll see why it's called Candyland. I don't want to spoil it because it's just cool. But what I can say historically, it was a playroom. It was a room used for physical therapy and occupational therapy. But I want you guys, if you haven't been here before, I want you to experience yourself why we call it Candyland. So if you make your way into Devon, you can find an event staff or find one of the guides. I will personally be on the 3rd floor of Mayflower. But you'll go inside there, you'll be like, hey, show me where the Candyland is. They'll take you down there. The only place, you guys can't tell anybody this, all right? But I'm also, like, I get scared. I'm a giant weenie, all right? All right, that's it. Nobody else know this, okay? All right, good, secret. So, yes, I get scared too, working here. So, the only place that I will not investigate by myself, if I know that the building is alone, is the right side of the basement over here. Because when I walk down there, it literally just reminds me of Silent Hill. It's so freaking creepy. It's like the apartments. It's so disturbing.
Amy, Adam, and Jack, everybody. Two of the absolute sweetest people you will ever meet in paranormal reality television. And Amy.
Wait a minute.
Just kidding, Amy. You all are the 3 sweetest people.
Wait, we only have one microphone? What?
There should be.
Well, I don't
We're
think
just so
Hello. You can just shout out your questions.
I just want to make a really cool announcement before we begin. We're, the 3 of us, the reason we're up here mainly is because we're launching a spin-off series. It's called Portals to Kindred. Oh shit! See, it's happening. It's happening. They agree. It will be on every single streaming platform you've ever seen. No, Hulu's gonna, Netflix, it'll be all of them. Disney Plus, everything. Portals to Kindred.
Hashtag. We're fine, we'll figure it out.
Check. Alright, got it. I'm back. Alright. Next question. Oh, right over here, this young man.
Oh no, it amazes us. The weird thing is that, so when we're doing this method, which if you're not familiar, it's when one of us are listening to a spirit box voice placing headphones with a blindfold on, and someone else is asking the question. So whoever's listening has no idea what's being answered. And we have full conversations that way. And so the really wild part is when you're the person who's under, you have no idea what's just transpired, and you take your headphones off, and you're going for the answers. It's shocking. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll ever get used to it, and we can't take credit for that. That was a technique developed by Carl Pfeiffer and Connor Mandel and Michelle Tate and Stanville Town in Colorado. That's what they call the Estes method. But it's just, I feel like it's probably one of the most dynamic methods that has been introduced in the paranormal in decades. So definitely try it here. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think.
Right here up front.
Other than your own senses, do you have a go-to piece of equipment?
A go-to piece of equipment.
I have a millimeter.
Yeah.
I have a millimeter.
I like a recorder. You know.
The instrument or the device?
I think, both serve their purpose of investigation. I think a nice melodic recorder tune can relax the energy of the world.
As the mother of a fourth grader, no, it is not relaxing at all. 3 blind mice, over. I agree. I like anything that can give. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of equipment you have where things interact and you get responses, but I like something that provides definitive answers, like a recorder or, voice on video recording, whatever. Something that we can follow a lead that can bring us actual history.
Also, if you have recorders on your phone, if you can use them. If you don't have a you just press record. That's what it's doing. It's recording it, So that's cool.
The ghosts do not want us to speak to them. This happened with everyone or just us?
And we're back. Right up here.
When you do things like this, does Chip ever join you?
Chip used to quite a bit, but he's been very vocal about this on social media. He is a caregiver for a relative right now, so it's really hard for him to travel. And also, Chip is just, he's tired of traveling. He's very honest about it. So yeah, but it's hard for him to get away these days. But he does make a few conventions here and there.
Chip's actually, he's an amazing psychic. Chip's great. Next question. Jason Hollis, we'll need you.
It's fine. Everyone relax. Don't show fear. Don't breathe.
Hollis, we're here for you. Where you at?
Oh, shit. There's not a bar. We need a bar. Go ahead.
You were recently in Elmira, New York.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, I know there's quite a few locations you likely were able to while you were there. Was there anything that happened that didn't make the cut?
Oh, so much. That one line where Amy is like, this is the most haunted place they've ever been. People are like, that's bullshit. I didn't see nothing on this show. You suck. No ghosts. 1 star. So yes, I heard a disembodied male voice. We played poker with a ghost, 100 billion%. The ghost actually did.
Okay, so here's the weird thing. Okay, so I don't know if you remember in the episode, we determined there was this doctor bag that had some sort of energy attached to it. So the way we determined that, which I don't think made the episode, one of the ways we determined it was we moved the bag. So supposedly the spirit that was kind of attached to this bag was not very fond of women, right? And so in order to find out if this bag was haunted, we moved it elsewhere. So Adam took the bag, and I sat there, and said, I moved it into another room. I'm like, great. put the bag? And he's like, in the women's history room. Like, and so he puts this women-hating doctor bag in the women's history room, and suddenly we hear this poor woman's footsteps moaning, ooh, down the hallway. And I'm telling you, everyone heard it, it was on camera, but we just could not make it fit in the episode to give it enough like story, like to explain what actually happened. So that was just one of many things that happened. I'm actually interviewing the curator there on Tuesday for Haunted Road. We're doing an episode of Haunted Road about it. So she's sweet. Oh, Tracy? Oh, I love her. Tracy. Yes. She's lovely. She's lovely. So I'm talking to her Tuesday morning.
That's one of the casualties of like being confined to a 45-minute confined. Testing. We only have 45 minutes to show you everything, and sometimes, you know, we get flaky away. If we don't show enough, people are like, I want to see more. We're like, well, we'll hope there's edits that you can see at some point. It doesn't work. But yeah, that's one of the craziest, great haunted places. Plus, if you've never visited, you should visit because it's well kept, well curated. They know what they're talking about. Sybil, her ghost is there, and we also did an entire trek down to the Fox History property. We put that on camera. That was released because we wanted to make sure that everyone knew where the spiritualist movement came from and why we're talking about it. It's a wonderful place.
Got a question right back here, guys.
This is for Jack. So when are you going to be on TV? So where we can see, so we can see some kind of investigation and how you're going to do it? Because I've watched other things and I haven't seen anything on.
Sure. Okay. Unfortunately, Paul's Herald did get canceled. But we just got done doing 6 episodes of Night of Terror, so those are coming back in the fall. Each of those 6 episodes out of the. Yeah, that is it. Honestly, back. I managed to squeeze 6 episodes out of the network before everything kind of got shut down, so it's kind of nice. And some really crazy shit happens. Like some of the craziest things I think I've ever experienced. So, yeah, make sure you watch it because it's pretty fucked.
Next question.
You just mentioned that you had so many things that you can't fit in episodes. Would you do all your cut pieces and put out a couple of episodes or even bloopers?
Yeah, so there was this great series that we did called Kindred Spirits Resurrected, and it was half-hour follow-ups to what we do. There's also a lot of YouTube content, and then we even did 3 specials if you can find scariest moments, best evidence, and Chip Coffee says the word fuck all the time. I think that's what it was called. That. It was a special about that word and insanity. But yeah, we hope to do that, but we can't control what they want to put out there. But I got so many things in the song right here that I'm gonna throw out. And you're gonna say something.
I am gonna say something. So, not to promote Haunted Road, but I do actually talk to a lot of people that were on Kindred. I interview
Computer. Rumor. Girls. August. Sword. Manage. Regard.
What do you want a snack? What did I? You said taste, then snacking, then hungry. Oh, no, you're hungry. It's kind of late. It's after dinner time. It's almost 10 p.m. Did anybody feed you today? Yeah. I gotta feed you. It's okay. How tall this kid is?
Well, you said that it hugged your leg before. Maybe it's not on the couch.
I think it's a small person. Yeah, maybe it's too high up or something. Because he gets below my knees. I mean, it could just be puppy dragging too.
Sadie.
Sadie? August and Sadie so far. Hello? Sadie, are you the one that's stressed and feels pressured? I promise you don't have to do anything you don't want to. Is there anything that will help you feel less stressed?
Control.
Control. Well, what would you like? You've got something over there. You've got the balls on the floor. You can keep talking through this if you want. It's okay. Everyone in here is nice. August, I think, went sleepy by wise because he hasn't come back in there. But Sadie's apparently stressed and feels pressured. And I was like,
Football.
football? Don't got one of those. She has a ball, but it's not a football. She said she wants something to feel in control, that'll make her less stressed. You can have the ball and make it flash if you want.
Move the balls to the floor and you can play with them if you like.
Oh yeah, I was just I was telling her whenever they grab my leg, they were only grabbing the one. Farmer. More trouble with.
Stop.
Yeah. And I was like, stop. You're ready to stop. Are you tired? Okay, honey. You don't have to talk anymore. You can go to sleep. It was nice talking to you, though. Thank you so much. And whenever little August wakes up, thank him too. The people who were leaving when we came in here upset you, were they mean to you? Or too forceful? Because you seemed kind of peeved with them. Which is totally valid. You can feel however you want with anybody here. I know people were very nice to you guys. Take your time. I can see you're trying. It's okay. Don't get discouraged. I know it takes a while. It can be a lot even for all of us. It's okay. Don't get discouraged. I know it takes a while. It can be a lot even for all of us. It can be a lot even for all of us. Somebody keeps trying very hard without quite getting it. That's okay. I've got Yeah, they're trying so hard. I appreciate everyone else calming down for this person too. It's very nice of you. I know, I'm getting it too. You're getting closer.
I
You're
feel it
so
on my
close.
shoulders.
Yeah. Act? Yeah. Did you hear Hunt? Is that who you're trying to come and see right now? Yeah, she has a cute little kitty bag too. Yeah. It looks like a rug.
It does.
Soft like a rug.
Yeah, soft like a rug.
We're really proud of you. I know you probably didn't hear that enough. And I'm really sorry that you didn't hear that enough. Everyone needs to hear that someone's proud of them sometimes. I really got a lot of him because his first one was like, chubby. And then he was like, snacks. And I was like, do you want a snack? And he was like, hungry. He was very, very, very cute. I'm getting like full blown like
I'm getting like
yeah.
tingly. There was a thing when you were in college, you had to stay up all night because if you're doing a graphic design work, you had to.
Yeah, you have the graphic design degree still.
Yes.
I don't know if you know what graphic design is, but Kara basically gets paid to do arts and crafts all day.
Yes.
It's
We're
pretty
vendors
fun.
here. We're vendors here tomorrow.
It's it went bananas. I was like, you want Kara to show you how to draw something?
Oh yeah.
Somebody wants to do arts and crafts. Oh, there it goes.
Want me to show you some pictures I made?
You had fun last night. It was, you said your first time doing like a real paranormal investigation like that.
Yeah. We've been to a couple of different ghost hunts where we got like dowsing rods and stuff, and we went to Gettysburg before and went into the Farnsworth house. We done tours, but not really like investigating with like
equipment,
phones
yeah,
or anything like that. But I've been to Salem, I've been to Lizzie Borden house, and a couple ghost hunts around town in Belmont, which actually Belmont is haunted.
What did you think of it?
The tour, awesome.
Yeah.
Never had anybody talk to us before in our phones, and I believe like everything that was coming through on our speakers was actually them talking.
Yeah, it made sense to what we were asking though.
Yeah.
I like hamburger guy last night.
Yeah, that was fun. And your baby attachment.
Yeah, little August becoming attached to my leg most of the night.
But yeah, Limerick was like the coolest one that we went into last night.
This is the Mayflower building, and it has been loud for us. So I've been feeling giant bursts of energy. Kara saw a shadow figure in one of the windows, which was really cool. And she wants me to try SLS to see if we pick anything up. So the wind today has been so explosive, on and off explosive, that even people with trailers are having their giant, chunky, heavy stuff fall. So what just happened with us, Kara? How did they help us?
Putting authentic Pennhurst bricks
on all of our stakes. That's pretty awesome. It definitely gives it a better spooky feel. Being little blanket buddies. Yeah. So basically, this is what I've heard, and I believe there's some history to back it up if you look it up. So way back in the day, when we had only stage plays instead of movies and stuff, what happened was they used to dress them in period attire. So if you had like a samurai or a knight, they were in real metal armor, which weighs a lot. Sometimes suits of armor were like 70 pounds and above. And they realized that, one, that winded their actors very quickly, and two, it was incredibly loud. So when this guy was shuffling around in his samurai armor and someone else was trying to say their lines, no one could hear them. And they ended up opting for the little sheet over the top after a while. There was a little bit more, I believe, behind specifically the white sheep, like, you know, that's funeral shroud.
Well, that was really cool. I really had no idea.
Yeah, I like recently learned it because I get bored and learn things. But yeah, between funeral shroud and that's what you kind of look like when you're in the morgue and stuff, and just it was too loud. It was just too loud and too heavy.
Yeah, so my immediately thought was that because you have white sheet on you when you die.